This podcast is sponsored by Packs. Whether on water, on land or in the air, Packs bags are both versatile and flexible backpacks that are perfectly suitable for your requirements in the most demanding of environments. Packs bags are highly regarded due to their exceptional performance in pre-hospital and in critical care environments. Renowned for their durability, they endure harsh conditions while providing rapid and reliable access to essential kit. So their well-organised compartments and customisable configurations enhance efficiency in high-stress situations. Packs bags are designed with infection control in mind and are easy to clean and disinfect. Their highly visible colours and reflective strips add quick identification and adherence to quality standards, assuring reliability. The versatility of Packs bags caters to a diverse EMS providers, but also delivers vital equipment and durability and ease of use for pre-hospital critical care services globally. I've used Packs bags in a number of critical care situations and they're absolutely excellent. Please see the show notes for further details.
You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.
So welcome back to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast with myself, Owen Walker. In this episode, we're going to be looking at part 2 of surviving cardiac arrest with Zoe Hitchcock. So what I wanted to do is release the second part of surviving cardiac arrest and just tell Zoe's organic story. I interviewed Zoe for the podcast in one of the earlier episodes and we'll link that into the show notes as well. So Zoe, 9 years ago in 2013, had a cardiac arrest whilst walking down Oxford Street in London. So Zoe suffered a cardiac myopathy causing a VF arrest. And again, the adage that it takes a system to save a life truly came into focus on that day. So I was part of this resuscitation attempt, successful attempt, and indeed was part of the team that first got to Zoe as a first responder. But what I wanted to do, instead of labour the actual incident in detail, just look at Zoe's first-hand experience of both pre and post event, and panning back almost 10 years now from the initial event and getting her perspective across the last 10 years of life, migrating away from that cardiac arrest and how it's changed her life, the turning point, the perspective change, and indeed just her reflections. So please do enjoy the episode. Please do rate and review the podcast. Feel free to jump over to the website to leave any feedback. Okay, enough from me. Here's Zoe.
So before that very fateful day, I'd got married to my lovely husband Phil about 6 months before, and starting the year, everything was great. You know, we were very excited about what was ahead. Even thinking back then, like, you know, we just married, like, when will we start a family? And then unfortunately at work, I went through a bit of a difficult time. Government cuts, I worked for the police, and very fortunately managed to keep my job role, but as a result of that, ended up in a different role, and because of that change, found myself in London on the day of my cardiac arrest. So I think it was probably pretty fated that I was there, and yeah, very fortunately, because I was on the busiest street in London, I got help very quickly when I collapsed.
Could you maybe just speak to how, because I believe you were running to get Phil some shoes actually on that day, and what's sort of the last thing you remember, Zoe, and indeed sort of the last thing you remember pre-incident, and then the first thing you remember post-incident, if that's okay?
Yeah, so I've got like a really strong memory of driving to police headquarters, and I don't know if it was like that day or like maybe a day that week, but I remember like driving to work, singing along in the car. I remember the song that was playing on the radio. I won't sing that now, I'll save you from it. But yeah, that's like really strong in my mind. And from the day, I know this is from the day, I've kind of got a hazy memory of a conversation I had with a colleague at a meeting that I'd gone to near Wood Street, near Moorgate, and I know that I left that meeting and I went to Oxford Street, and I was probably a little bit rushed for time because I was trying to get back for an evening commitment, and I didn't tell anyone I was going there. I'd gone there to buy Phil the Jordans he'd wanted since he was 13 for his birthday, and yeah, so nobody knew I was there. And I'm not sure if I do remember, or I've tried to remember kind of that last journey from walking from Oxford Circus, like up Oxford Street. I've done it a number of times since, but there's a part of me that kind of like feels that maybe I felt like I needed to sit down, and I was maybe like looking for like one of the seats along there, but I just don't know how accurate that is. And I feel like I don't remember anything else about what happened, probably because my brain has tried to protect me from any of the horror of what unfolded, or because literally I went into shutdown and I don't remember it for that reason.
And I don't think it's too uncommon actually to have this sort of cardiac arrest amnesia, and to have post-event amnesia actually, and just to really not have a real clear timeline or sequence of events. After interviewing a number of cardiac arrest survivors, I think this seems to be sort of a commonality really. Could you sort of speak to, because and it was such a seminal event, Zoe, and just I think put a lot of things in perspective for you that you spoke about quite candidly on the last episode. Could you maybe just speak to sort of the critical chain of survival that was in place for you at the time? Because we spoke about the police, and then obviously we turned up, and then HEMS, the helicopter emergency medical service, turned up. Could you sort of maybe speak to that sequence of chain of survival from your perspective?
Yeah, so I was so incredibly lucky that I got help and attention straight away. And actually, as you know, before the two police officers came to help me, I'd had CPR by then from at least 3 other members of the public. And one of the police officers that gave me CPR, his CPR training was second to none. He'd been in the army, his stamina was everything that I needed, and he really did like fight and give it his all to try and get me back and keep me alive. The fact that you were able to come to me on a bicycle and race there, London's so busy with traffic, and you were able to bypass all of that. I know you said like buses and stuff were like stopping and literally flagging you down and saying like she's over there, because like people very they realized the seriousness of what was happening, and that you weren't, and that defib was needed. If I had perhaps taken the train straight home on that day and fallen into cardiac arrest on the train, or if I'd have been local to where I live in Hertfordshire, I would not have got the same response. I could have, it's not like massively rural where I live, but it's much quieter than London, and I could have collapsed in the street and wouldn't have got CPR straight away. There wouldn't be a paramedic able to come to me on a bike. There probably wouldn't be an ambulance that could have got to me so quickly. There aren't enough ambulances as it is. And I certainly wouldn't have got probably a HEMS team coming. And really, that's something that the whole sequence of events, but I really do believe that because I was able to have the cooling agent treatment that only a doctor could give at the roadside, I really do feel that that's been critical to the way I've been able to recover and fully recover. Because I would say that because of the way I've been able to like go on and live my life since, I feel fully recovered. I've not sustained any heart damage, any brain injury. I am as I was before, apart from now I've got this like little guardian angel ICD. So incredibly lucky to have been where I was, and for the sequence of events to have unfolded in the way that they did. I've said it before, but the stars definitely aligned for me that day.
So Zoe, just looking retrospectively sort of at your post-cardiac arrest recovery in Hammersmith Hospital. So if you could, I wonder if you could just unpack for listeners the support you received from family and friends at the time, and indeed Phil, because you speak of this post-event amnesia, and I think it must be greatly distressing just not being able to piece together initially what's happened, and indeed quite the gravity of sort of what's happened. Could you maybe just speak to the social and family support, and indeed how the time of sort of convalescence and recovery was for you?
Yeah, so I had 3 days thereabouts in an induced coma, and when I was brought round, my family, I won't go into this too much, but they were told that there could be a risk of brain damage. And when I first did come round, I wasn't able to shape my mouth to make words. So basically it was just like noise that was coming out, and I was very agitated because I'd been brought around quite quickly. I was waving my arms around, and my family thinking, oh my goodness, she's like brain damaged. It was just like the worst feeling for them in those moments. They were so thankful that I'd survived, but were then thinking, oh God, like what life will be ahead of her. But actually very quickly, within a few hours, I was able to communicate through like signaling with my eyes, blinking, which for them kind of told them that I was in there. And as the hours passed, and through some sleep, eventually woke and then was able to talk. My mum did not leave my bedside the whole time I was in hospital. I was there for 2 weeks. She was, as you know, there the whole time. And that was, I mean, just I look back and I think like, God, it must have just been so awful for her in dealing with what she was kind of like witnessing and seeing, and then me coming around from the coma and seeming like I was brain damaged. It just must have been like the absolute worst. But she didn't leave my side, and the one time she did was during the night when I woke up, and I said to the doctor, like, where am I? And he said, oh, don't worry, don't worry, you've had a cardiac arrest, but you're in hospital. And I don't remember this. Again, it's like the post-traumatic amnesia. And then my mum came back, and she was explaining to me what had happened. I went to sleep, I wake up again, and I was like, where am I? And it like kept happening like that. And I know, bless you, that you came to meet me at the hospital. And that was really important, actually, to my family, because it was such a wonderful opportunity to be able to thank you. We got to meet that first time, but also the team there, they were able to understand a bit more about what had happened to better help the care and treatment going, and tests and stuff going forward. But I don't remember our first meeting. And again, I think it's that like post-traumatic amnesia. So when I look back, it sounds kind of a bit messed up to say, because obviously it was a very traumatic experience for my family. But for me, when I wake up, all of that trauma was over, and I just had this loving family around me and the most incredible support. And I look back on it with really fond memories. I just feel so lucky that I got the treatment and the care that I did. The staff in the hospital, like every single one of them that I came into contact, from the lunch lady to the cardiologist consultant in charge, like every single person played a part in that kind of recovery journey. And really thankful.
So Zoe, how has life been since the implanted defibrillator, or the ICD? How has it sort of changed the way that you exercise, or indeed the way you approach physical activity? How has sort of the transition been?
So when I first came out of hospital, I did struggle with my fitness. I couldn't walk a few steps before I felt exhausted. And I think I might have said this in the last podcast, but like Phil was great in kind of like helping to train me back to some kind of fitness. And we'd just go out like every day, and he'd walk me a little bit further down the road until I could walk around the whole block. I did some physio locally, and some cardiac rehab physio, and it wasn't up to it. I hate to like sit and be negative about any aspect of the NHS, but it was unfortunately really quite poor. They weren't prepared to deal with, they were used to dealing with much older patients, and they weren't geared up to deal with somebody like me who, one, had a cardiac arrest, not a heart attack, but two, who had a real like zest for life and really wanted to get back to some kind of fitness. I'd sustained some rib damage as part of the CPR, and that was quite aggravating and causing me a lot of shoulder pain, and I'd lost a lot of like flexion and movement. I couldn't basically like lift my arm up properly, and so I needed like proper rehab for that. My London cardiologist was incredible, Dr. Varnava at Hammersmith, and she sent me to Charing Cross to have some rehabilitation there. And the guy in charge there, Nigel, he and the team were absolutely outstanding. And it was everything that I needed it to be, and gave me the most amount of confidence. And actually, when I finished the program there, I can't remember how long it was. It might have been like 6 weeks, a couple of months. And when I finished the program there, I was kind of like doing interval training, like down at the local lakes here. And I say the lakes and it makes it sound flat, but actually there's like a slight hilly area, and like I'd be there with Phil like first thing in the morning, like running up and down the lakes and thinking like, wow, I can't believe like I can do this. Because in that early recovery, I didn't imagine that I'd ever get to the point where I was either physically fit enough or confident enough to do it. But wearing a heart monitor and just listening to the way my body felt, and also going by my experience at that Charing Cross rehabilitation, it just basically made me feel really empowered to take control of my own fitness again, and just to be fit. But I've learned I really hate running. For years, like before the cardiac arrest and even after it, like I'd be like, oh, running's a really good thing to do to keep fit. I really don't enjoy it. So nowadays, actually, I don't bother. I love dancing, like, and I could do a night at Ministry of Sound and like dance all night and still be tired the next day, like any other like person would be. But yeah, the ICD has given me confidence to live my life, and I think because I know it's there as a backup, and it has been used as a backup since the cardiac arrest. I feel safe to exercise and to carry on living normally.
So looking at life post 2013 and post the event, and now indeed you have a little daughter as well, so you have a family. How has your perspective changed since the event?
I've always been the sort of person that lives life to the full. I don't take anything like for granted, but even more so now. I suppose since having Poppy, like I feel a little bit more, in all honesty, I feel a little bit more wobbly, like about what happened. And I think that's because where I didn't look back and I just look forward, now I'm like, there is a risk like to me through having this condition, and I want to keep myself like safe and well for her. So I know that like not next summer, probably the summer after, my ICD will need to be replaced. It's a really standard procedure, they do lots of these. I was fine when I had it done before, but because I've got her now, I'm like, oh my goodness, will I be okay? I will be. But yeah, I suppose that's kind of changed things a little bit. But because of having her, and I'm happy to share that it wasn't the easiest journey to have her, not because of my heart condition, but just because it wasn't. She took a long time. It was our third IVF, so she's so incredibly precious, and my time with her is so incredibly precious. So I really just try and make the most of, people tell you when you become a parent to like do that anyway, because it goes so quickly, and it does. She's 2.5 now, and I'm like, oh, I can't believe she's 2.5 already. But I really just try and make the most of time with her, and Phil, you know, our whole family, like as a unit, because you just never know when that might be taken away from you. Anything could happen to any one of us. So yeah, I suppose it's always there in the back of my mind.
So Zoe, looking at the importance of teaching CPR and sort of CPR from a skill perspective from in schools and indeed maybe community centres and as a national initiative, has it changed the way that you see the importance of CPR?
I'm delighted that now it's on the school curriculum. I know that recently, through parents of, very sadly, a young teenager who lost their life at school when they had a cardiac arrest because a defib wasn't available. They've campaigned to get defibs in schools, and that's now being pushed out. That's happening. So I'm so pleased to have seen that progress in, you know, like over the last 9 years, because when it happened for me, that was non-existent, and it was something that I felt really passionate about. So I'm really pleased now that things have moved on so much. CPR is so crucial. If I hadn't got CPR straight away, I might not have survived, and if I had, my life might look very differently. So yeah, it's like the first part in the chain of events. I said on the last podcast, but I know when I had my cardiac arrest, survival rates for out of hospital cardiac arrest was 8.4%. I think now it's like 1 in 10 people survive. That's still so incredibly low. But hopefully through more people becoming aware of CPR, through kids learning it at school and getting the confidence to give someone CPR if they needed to, that will change things. I actually met, I had a blood test a few months ago, and this amazing lady who did it for me, she told me that she'd given CPR to 4 people in her lifetime, 50-50 like survival rate. 2 of them died, 2 of them survived. But you just think, wow, if that woman can come into contact with like 4 people who needed CPR, yeah, so hopefully things will change, and for the positive.
So Zoe, as we come into land on the conversation, just from a take-home perspective, could you maybe just speak to 2 to 3 take-home messages that you'd like to confer to others?
So I know this podcast is mainly aimed at first responders, but if there's anyone listening to this like me, Joe Public, who perhaps don't know how to give CPR, please go and learn, or even look at the British Heart Foundation website to get some tips for them, because you really can change the outcome of somebody's life if you're able to give them CPR. And take home messages, I suppose. One of the things for me that is different since my cardiac arrest is, I suppose, and you know, maybe some people listening to this will think, well, actually that sounds a little bit negative, but before I was always so much of a people pleaser. And now I try and live my life where, you know, kindly, so not like hurting anybody, but also to like please myself. If there's something that I really don't want to do, or if I feel like I'm a bit overwhelmed with commitments, I will say no to stuff, because before, and I think, you know, it's maybe why what happened that day happened, I was just too busy rushing around like doing stuff. So yeah, slow down. If you need to slow down, like listen to yourself and slow down. And then finally, just don't take anything for granted. I have to remind myself of that too, you know, because I get caught up in the whole like treadmill of life, but I have to remind myself, like, don't take anything for granted, and enjoy the here and now, and enjoy the simple pleasures in life. And for me, like, they're what brings most happiness.
Zoe, listen, that's fantastic, and just a really nice way to finish the conversation. I think what we'll do is put the links to the other conversation in the show notes so people can have a deep dive on the incident itself and your reflections from the incident, just so that there's some marriage between the 2 episodes. But I just want to say thank you to you, really. I think for me, both as a clinician, just over time, you've just been a constant reminder of the good that can come from clinical practice, and actually that these concepts do work in the right conditions and for the right patients. And so, yeah, just thank you for A, being you, but B, just being a source of inspiration to me and others, because it's been truly powerful.
Bless you. Gosh, don't, 'cause you'll make me start crying. I mean, you know how thankful I am for you. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, and you are so special. You are so special to me, Phil, my family, and always will be. Thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to come back and chat a bit more. I hope this has been okay.
You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.